We're joined now by Kirby Hocutt, who is the College Football Playoff Committee Chair, who's kind enough to stop by here on Tiki and Tierney. Kirby, how are you today, sir? What's happening?
I'm doing great, gentlemen. Thank you for having me on.
Well, thanks for being on. You know, when I think about this college football playoff, and now you're in the third year of it, you guys, you got to be pleased with the results. It seems like for the first 3 or 2 years at least, you've gotten the 4 best teams. And it seems like maybe a little bit more complicated this year because of some of the one-loss teams that may look like they deserve to be in there. You guys agree with that, and how are you handling it?
Well, Tiki, I think you're exactly right. I think as we're into year number 3 of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, I think we've seen that in the first 2 years that this system with the selection committee, it works. In the first 2 years, been successful in identifying the 4 best teams in college football, and expect that'll be the same this year. And I think what's different with this system than others is we have a chance to watch these games. We're watching. All 12 members on the selection committee are watching these games each and every week. We have all the statistical data analysis in front of us, but then the additional step is for 2 days we get to come together face-to-face in a conference room and discuss from 12 different lenses and viewpoints what we see and who we think are the top 25 teams in the country. So, yes, we think the process is working great. The chemistry amongst this year's selection committee is tremendous. And, yeah, this year it's interesting. You know, I've said a couple of times this week, when you look at teams 7 through 19, we have 10 two-loss teams there, as well as a 1-loss West Virginia team and a 3-loss Florida State team this week, and so much parity, such small separation occurring in there. And then you mentioned the 1-loss teams at number 5, Ohio State with 1 loss, and at number 6, Louisville with 1 loss, all very good football teams.
You know, Kirby, also I remember at the beginning of this, there was maybe a premature call for expansion of the 4 to 8. And it's just died down. And I think that's a testament to you guys. Now, thinking back on it, do you ever think that you'll need 8, or just because 4 seems to be working?
You know, I think 4 is the right number, but you know, also recognizing that that conversation, that decision's not within the purview of the selection committee. That would be discussion amongst the management committee, which is the conference commissioners as well as the athletics director at Notre Dame. So our focus each and every week is to rank the top teams in the country. That's plenty of work, and for us to do each and every week, it keeps us plenty busy. But I will say, as a former college football player, you know, you get to the end of the season, I haven't yet once seen a young man say, boy, I wish I could play more games. I just think that once you get into 14 games from 12 regular season, a conference championship, a semifinal, a possible national championship, that's a long season. And I think we've seen 4 is the right number.
But with all due respect, Kirby, you're smart enough to know that at the end of the day, the student-athletes have no say in the matter in terms of how many games they play. If the NCAA deems are going to be, you know, financially rewarding to stand there, let's call it for what it is. I mean, so many times when it comes to making money, the circumstances that affect the student-athlete aren't really weighed as heavily as they should be, is what it is.
Well, I think that, college football, I think, is the greatest game in our country. I think the regular season of college football is so exciting, and it means so much. And as athletic administrators, our job is to look out for the welfare and protect these young men who play this game of college football. So I would say that is our priority, and we've got to continue to put the welfare of the student-athletes at the forefront of all the decisions and conversations that we have and make.
All right, we're talking to Kirby Hocutt with us here on Tiki and Tierney, College Football Playoff Committee Chair. So, Kirby, as you know, anything important in life, I mean, experience is paramount. I mean, anything where it's complex, I mean, once you do something, repetition's a good thing, provided you learn from mistakes. And I'm curious, what did you take away, as you look back in hindsight, years 1 and 2 of the process, maybe something that was a recurring issue that was either divisive or tricky or just really hard to figure out, that as you enter the third phase now, you are just more equipped and it's just much easier to navigate. Anything jump out that was tricky early that you guys seen, this part's actually become pretty easy for us now?
That's a very good question. And I would say I was not on the selection committee in year one, but I was in year two, and obviously I'm serving as the chair in year three. And I would say that what makes this work is having 12 different perspectives and having us come together on a weekly basis as we get into the back end of this college football season and debate. When we close that door, it's a very professional setting, but we don't always agree.
Mm-hmm.
But what we do agree on is that when we walk out of that room, that we believe we've done we fulfilled our responsibility and put the time and energy and commitment necessary to rank the top 25 teams in the country. So I think that dialogue, that discussion, that interaction, the human element of the 12 people in that room is what makes this process work for the college football playoff.
Now, Kirby, let me get the process right. You guys will debate about some of these teams and then vote. Is that how it works?
Well, yeah, it's a tremendous process that they've built for us. And when we come into the room, after we go through our conference reports, we will each enter the 30 teams that we believe deserve consideration for the top 25. And any team that receives 3 or more votes goes on our big board. And from that point, usually we have 33 to 35 teams on the board. We'll be asked to rank in no particular order the 6 teams that we believe should be at the top. And from that point in time, when we have 6 teams on the board, we will start debating. We will start comparing teams against each other before we will ultimately each select, in our own personal opinion, who teams 1, 2, and 3 are. So it becomes, you list teams that you believe deserve consideration, and from that point, we debate and compare those teams to one another before ultimately voting on teams 1, 2, and 3, and then working our way through the top 25.
Now, we can obviously change our opinions here, Kirby, at some point. If Alabama goes through a stretch and they lose 2 in a row, or if they even lose 1, or if they're even, well, they were challenged last week, but you know what I mean, if they actually lose a game at some point. But I'm curious here, the way it's gone out so far, flushing through the varying opinions in the room, what was more complicated? What has been more complicated, determining who the second best team is behind Alabama, or who the 4th best team is?
Well, I would say that Alabama, Clemson, and Michigan are clearly 1, 2, and 3, and all of those teams have played well on both sides of the ball and in all phases of the game. Those 3 teams have all beaten 3 or more teams that are in our current CFP top 25. This week, when you get to number 4, number 5, number 6, Washington, Ohio State, Louisville, the separation between Washington and Ohio State is very small. The committee has continued to be impressed with what we see on the field from the Washington Husky team. They've been consistent each week and have handled everything that's been put in front of them. And obviously you alluded earlier in the conversation to the one loss, Ohio State and Louisville. So that's been a lot of discussion and debate. And then also when you get teams 7 through 19, and honestly, this week we spent as much time on 20 through 25. It was that close of a week. And the margins at this point in the season are very small.
It's Kirby Hocutt with us here on Tiki and Tierney, the committee chair, college football playoff format. I'm curious. We discussed this on our show, and I know that you responded to this. I just want to make sure that I don't misrepresent how you did respond. Bobby Petrino spoke about, style points, and maybe he left a few points on the field, and maybe it would have been beneficial to his pro against Florida State. Beneficial in terms of perception if they would have put a few more points on the board and all that stuff. And you basically said, again, I hope I encapsulate your point, and if not, by all means, correct me. But the essence of your response was, we react to the tape and not necessarily the scoreboard. Number one, that's kind of a fair assessment of how you responded, right?
Yeah, that's a very fair assessment.
Okay. I would say, and I certainly believe you, but I would then say, but you're still humans. So as much as the tape gives you a football point of view, and the tape don't lie, Tiki knows that better than I do, you're still not immune to seeing a good team like Florida State get destroyed. And perceptually, I don't know how you can quantify that in your own minds or not quantify it, but there's still the human element to what the scoreboard looks like at the end of a game, if that made any sense. So how do you completely separate? I know what you said in response to what Bobby Petrino said, but I guess I would respectfully challenge how effectively human beings can do that.
Yeah, and good question and fair question. And, I would say that as you said, we watch these games and we see how the teams play. And a convincing victory in the game of football is not easily to define. A convincing win in one particular game could be a 13-0 outcome. It could be a 14-3 outcome. In a different game, it could be, a 35-14 game can be a convincing win. So, it's hard to define what a convincing win is, but when you see it, you know it, and we do not incent margin of victory in any way. But, there are convincing wins in the game of football, and we see those as a selection committee, but never would incent margin of victory in a particular outcome.
Kirby, do you think No, I was going to let you say, but do you think that a team like Louisville, who may not get a shot at a conference championship unless Clemson loses along the way, which I don't see happening, do they have a chance? Because we look at their top player, Lamar Jackson, is just unbelievable. He keeps them in the conversation. He's obviously high in the Heisman conversation. He makes that program a national program. But do they have a chance if they're not going to play in a conference championship?
Yeah, he's a dynamic player. He is so much fun to watch every week. But I would say that would require me to answer your question specifically. It would require me to speculate, and we don't do that. As y'all know, every week is different. Anything can happen on any given week in the game of college football. So I would say that I can't speculate and look ahead. But as we said, they keep winning, and Louisville is a very talented team.
Kirby, nice chat. Always good getting a feel for the process behind closed doors, and I know our audience really appreciates that as well. Thanks a lot, but I know we'll be talking down the road, Kirby. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks for having me on.
There he is.
Take care, Kirby.